Welcome back, listeners to Learning from Friends. My name is Kay Curtis, your tour guide in this lovely venture that I like to call Learning from Friends, where we bi-weekly meet together to be able to sit down and have these conversations of all the different topics and joys that are out there in the world, to be able to learn simply as it is, from friends, because that is what this world is all about here. And today, I'm sitting here with Emily Bright. But before you guys get to meet Emily, we got to do my mom's quote of the day. Mom, take it away.
Every person needs to take one day away, a day in which one consciously separates the past from the future. Jobs, family, employers, and friends can exist one day without any of us. And if our egos permit us to confess, they could exist eternally in our absence. Each person deserves a day away in which no problems are confronted, no solutions are searched for. Each of us needs to withdraw from the cares which will not withdraw from us. Maya Angelou.
Thank you, Mom, for those encouraging words. It's always good to have the start to a podcast with your voice, and it just means the world to me. So shout out to you, Mom. Shout out to you, Dad. I know y'all are always listening. So it means the world to me to have you guys doing this for me constantly and provide that little nice support that we all need in our lives. But I am sitting here in a park of standing peach tree in green space down in Atlanta or Buckhead area kind of deal. And it's sitting here with Emily, and we're going to talk about life is a performance. And you could take this in many different ways of however you want to kind of perceive it. But my brain's thinking very philosophically here of life as a performance, meaning every day we have these masks we wear. We have these inspirational words that we will use whenever we see different people. We act different ways. And today, Emily is going to focus really in on that and give us her perspective and her ideas of what it means for life is as a performance. And with that, Emily, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. It's such a beautiful day out. And for me, I feel lucky that I live in Georgia now. So I get to be outside in the nice, sunny atmosphere. It's early March and it's a beautiful day. So thank you for having me.
I think it's like 53 degrees outside right now.
I know. And I'm even a
it's
little
nice.
bit cold. I'm like, I have all my layers, but no, we picked a park. The birds are singing. It's gorgeous.
I'm hoping we can pick that up in the background. We'll see.
We'll see, hopefully. But it's a nice day and it's a Sunday and it's good to be outside.
It is really good to be outside. Get a little sunbathing. It's one of those things that just get outside.
I photosynthesize. That's what I do. Yes.
I like that.
All my friends know that whenever I go outside, I'm always photosynthesizing.
I love that. But the large majority of our audience here has no clue who you are.
Very true.
So can you give us a little bit of like a Wikipedia page of yourself and what would you like someone to know the highlights of your life to be able to connect with Emily Bright?
Yeah, so I guess if we're doing a little Spark Notes version, I prepared something, kind of an intro to the topic of what I was thinking. When I was thinking about this topic, you could talk about anything in the world, what would you talk about? That's a pretty daunting question.
Yeah, it is intimidating.
It's pretty intimidating, but there's nothing I love more than an intimidating question. So that's number one of my Spark Notes. I love a good on-the-nose, pointed question. I consider myself a conversationalist. I enjoy sitting, learning from friends. That's why I was so excited about this podcast. But just the idea of being able to sit and talk and learn from someone else's perspective, that's important to me. That's something that I strive to do in my everyday life. So I try to take perspective, curiosity, creativity, and merge that together into leading a fulfilling life of sorts. Fulfilling.
Oh, you have to, yeah.
Fulfilling is something that changes for me every day, and I get to a Spark Notes version of, like, who am I? It would be that I'm always doing something. I'm always using my hands. I'm crafting. I'm playing piano. I'm painting. I'm a gesticulator. I'm talking with my hands.
I'm one of those people. My hands are in my lap right now.
I'm flailing all over the place, always smacking people in the face. You have to watch out when you're around me because I will always bring enthusiasm to everything that I do. So for me, that's something that I also am a writer and I love stories. And that's also why this podcast was so intriguing to me. Is my whole life I've been just interested in other people's words and how words are constructed, how
They're
people
the most powerful weapon we have.
choose to use their words. People don't even realize that being a writer, the power lies within themselves. Being alive is being creative. We have to create constantly in our lives to keep us going. We have to create food. We have to create shelter. We have to create meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
And I hate when people say that they're not a creative person because I get told that all the time. People are like, oh, you're so creative. I could never be creative. It's a muscle. And there's actually, if there's one thing also that I think has really helped envelope my creative identity, is I once watched something called Vox Explained, The Mind Explained.
Okay.
And it's a mini docuseries.
It's on like Netflix?
It's on Netflix.
Okay.
And I implore everyone to go and watch this. It's called Creativity Explained. And David Byrne, who's one of my favorite artists, the lead singer of the Talking Heads, he walks through his creative process and how he's come to make some of the most groundbreaking work of the 20th century and beyond. So that, to me, showing how creativity is a muscle and having to constantly work at it and shape it and fail and try again, that's part of my life's mission, is to take each failure in each everyday adventure and turn it into something new that I learned. I try to establish short goals for myself. I feel like now I'm getting kind of lost from the Wikipedia page
No,
part.
you're not. This is part of it. That is the whole idea. Is
But
the Wikipedia
curiosity.
page can be so long and so short. It's all a matter of your perspective, your choices.
I'm a curious person. Curiosity is something that I think definitely keeps me going, and it's something that I would get bored of just thinking my own thoughts. That's why I need that kind of constant stimulation. I need those other stories. I need other ways of viewing words and seeing how other people's mind works. I love trying to backtrack and be like, why would someone phrase it in that way? Or why would someone start a sentence with, an adverb versus a noun or whatever? I kind of am a grammar nerd a little bit in a way.
You are very impressive with your grammar.
Thank you.
My grammar is not that strong.
I'm a little bit of a nerd with that, definitely. So it really just goes down to like the basis of language and communication. That's what fuels me. And so I wrote this little opening note thing when talking about life as a performance, because I think that's a pretty intimidating concept. People are like, I don't want to have to perform in my life. You're being fake. But I want to explain why, to me, that's actually you being your most authentic self. Our whole lives are performative. Every day we have to wake up, put on a smile, dress ourselves up, put on makeup or something to make us feel more alive, drink caffeine so we can function, fuel our bodies so they can perform, and so much more. Our lives are a series of patterns, routines, rehearsals that help us reach goals in our lives. And I know what you're thinking. When it comes to masking and pretending that everything's fine, that's a different kind of performance, and that's something we can speak about as well. That is a heartbreaking, isolating, gut-wrenching type of performance that plunges you deeper and deeper into your own psyche so that you can't see out of it. And putting on a brave face for everyone, pretending everyone's fine, that, of course, is acting. But that's not the acting that I'm talking about here. Acting is a form of expression, and something that should feel so natural that you don't even feel like as if you're the same person you started the monologue as. And the best kind of acting should feel like the semi-permeable membrane between reality and the scene is slowly dissipating, and the world just fades away. So that acting is not just with forward positive emotions, but real emotions. And you're able to tap into and find deep down those gut-wrenching experiences that then you can translate into storytelling. Part of a performance means tapping into a range of emotions. I like to think of a dynamic actor like Meryl Streep or Anne Hathaway, people we can see play multiple roles and kill it in every single role they do. And that means being able to access and harness those deep, difficult emotions. So life is performative in the way of being able to tame those emotions, to be able to tap into them, to be able to harness them, and then to be able to use that power and keep propelling you forward. Think about your reactions to the scene. I had an acting teacher one day tell me acting is reacting. And I
love that phrase.
I love that phrase. And I was a child when she told me it. It was my acting teacher. And I loved her so much, and I really looked up to her. And acting is reacting. And it's all about how do you change your actions in the world, because you can't necessarily change your thoughts or your feelings. That's kind of innate who you are. That you can't help, but you can change your actions. You can change how you react to a situation and stimuli around you. And that's why life is performative, because we need to act differently in different situations. You act differently at work than you act with your friends.
Very true.
Then you act with your family. Then you act when you're alone. So it's all different ways of being your most authentic self, but you don't let everyone see that 24/7. There's different parts of your authentic self that you can access. So the more you tap into that rehearsal phase or that maintenance phase of trying to figure out who you are and trying out different bits almost, trying out different little routines, if you will, different ways of interacting, different ways of compassion, different ways of using your words, the more you'll be able to show up for yourself when it's showtime.
Nice. I feel like that needs to be like an Oscar-winning performance speech.
Happy Oscar Day, too.
It is Oscar Day? It is
Happy
Oscar Day?
Day.
I knew it was coming up soon, but I didn't know when it was.
Yes,
Oh,
it's
my
today.
gosh,
I'm
that's
excited to
amazing.
see it. I've been watching a lot of the movies this year.
Oh, so you're ready.
I'm ready. I am ready. Yeah, I like Oscar Day.
So I've liked something that popped in my mind. This goes back to like episode, I think 3 of the podcast. For those that listening, Andrew McIntyre does an episode talking about masks. The whole entire time, like in our lives, we hear put on many hats and like put on many masks and put on all this different little stuff. Like the whole entire time you're speaking of that, it reminds me of just how the world can be so drastically different from minute to minute and situation from situation you're interacting with. Because whenever I went to a restaurant earlier today, I interacted differently than I'm interacting with you right now because I know you differently than I do the person that's there. And I'm looking forward so deeply to this conversation of it feels almost like meta in a way.
Kind of. It is a little trippy.
Like,
you got to think about it and like not let yourself get too matrixy about it.
Exactly. But that's the part that I'm excited about it is been looking forward to this and trying to figure out when writing this outline to kind of get prepared for this conversation, even though I wrote it like, I think a month or 2 ago, I still have to constantly revisit it. I think about, I wonder how she's going to respond to this. I wonder how she's going to respond to that. It's like, as you're getting to kind of hear this, that's the beauty of I'm still probably going to be processing this years later.
Yeah.
So this may be like watching Inception of listening to it 20, 30 times trying to figure out what she's saying.
Exactly. And that's my goal in this world, is to make people stop and wonder and say, I didn't think about it in that way. That's what I do with my job as well. I'm a writer, and my whole job is coming up with big, fun ideas. My brand right now that I work on is Coca-Cola. So how can we get people to engage with our marketing in a fun way? We have to get people to think about stories and experiences in a way they haven't seen before. But if you think about it, it's 2025. Everything in the world, every story's been told, right? Nothing necessarily is original. So it's about recycling and reinforming past experiences based on your own perspective. So I'll take a look at something and I'll be like, okay, so let's say Sprite did this commercial last year honoring 50 years of hip hop. What's something we could do looking forward instead and give people a new kind of perspective, something new to latch onto and a new way to approach the situation. So for me, that's one of the most important things. Something that I try to cover in my life is, how do I get people to think about their own experiences in a different way even?
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. Well, how can you discuss the different roles or characters you assume in your daily life? Like, how do they differ in various settings, such as like your work, your home, or social environments?
So it's funny because, again, I don't want people to take this the wrong way and be like, oh, so you're telling me that I have to like act like this perfect person at work and act like this perfect person in my family and pretend everything. There's no perfect. And part of this whole conversation and this choosing of this topic is, it was during a time in my life where I was feeling very imperfect. And I needed to make a lot of changes. And it's something that I felt like I was performing a lot in my life. And maybe in the more negative sense, performing in having to put on a smile every day, and performing and having to put on a brave face, and having to lie to people about how I really was feeling. Not necessarily lying, but maybe being selective with the truth and with how I let myself be vulnerable to other people. So when it comes to different characters, I would say the best thing that you can do is just think about, I always like to look at what's a mentor of mine in my life at that point. Is it a work mentor? Is it a friend that I really look up to and admire? Is it a character, even a fictitious character in TV or movies or books? It's who do I want to emulate in my life? I think about the traits that they have and how my traits intersect with those and how I can make it a bit stronger. So when it comes to work, for example, I try to be the most curious person possible, because my job, I'm expected to ask a lot of questions, which is something I do naturally. I like to ask questions.
So it fits. That's the thing. Find the career that works for you.
Yes, exactly. I very much did that. But being able to ask questions and tap more into some of like the nerdy marketing language that I need to know, the advertising world, to be able to bring forth new, interesting content to my creative directors and prove that I have a mind independent of my own, that the workings of my mind are capable of producing award-winning ideas. that's a character that I assume at work, which is interesting. I kind of have to put on this fake, and I hate to say the word fake, but it is, or at least kind of a bolstered sense of confidence to be like, this is my idea, this is why it's going to work, and this is why you should pay for it. It's kind of a daunting thing to ask. We're taught to be pretty humble in our lives,
True.
And being humble is, of course, important, but having self-compassion is really hard.
That is the hard thing. It is.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to be like, I'm going to get caught up on words here, so I'm not going to say anything.
No, it's okay, but I use self-compassion to try and help me assume those different characters. When I'm with my friends, for example, how do I, maybe tune out what's going on in my mind and really active listen to them?
Yes. Oh my gosh, being so active.
Yes, it's active. It's not being passive in your everyday life, because we just sometimes let things happen to us, and it's hard when we go to a workout class and you just want to get the workout done and move on, and then you have to go to work and you have all these meetings, and then you have to go home, and then you have to make dinner. It's hard to stay active in each and everything that you do, but I try to have some sort of experience or trait that grounds me in that experience. So when I'm at work, it's being curious and being creative. When I'm with my friends, it's being a little bit more silly and tapping into that side, letting that like play side of me come out. When it's something like this, it's trying to really just think, like, trust my gut almost.
Truly,
right?
You
like,
have to trust who you are.
There's times where, of course, you can be a little bit less filtered than others. Trusting my gut at work, not as much, because maybe you need to take your time to think about it and mull things over. But sitting here with a friend on a nice day in the park, something like that, it's easier for me to be able to tap into that more inquisitive side of myself, or that more daring side of myself. So it's all just about, how do you show up for other people in your lives, but how do you want to show up for yourself? I, again, think back to mentors that are important to me, and I think I really love their style. It could be something as simple as that. Like, also, you dress differently, too. Think about putting on an outfit every day.
That's
what
true.
you wear, would I wear this to the office? I'm in jeans and a sweatshirt? Probably not, But would I wear this going out with my friends? Probably not. But on a nice day in the park?
Yeah.
Why not? It's comfortable. It's great. So that's also part of, how do we show up? How do we present ourselves in a way that's going to make us feel the most secure in that situation? Because it's a lot of the time, it's about security. Because when we feel insecure.
Is so true.
Yeah, right? Like, insecurity is one of our biggest
demons.
Yeah, that's a good
really
word to
is.
use. Yeah.
Like,
something that just latches onto you and won't let go. And insecurity breeds vulnerability, but the type of vulnerability that makes you feel less than. So that's something that I also try and do with the different characters that I play, is to try and maintain a sense of authenticity and stick to values.
Yeah,
that the end of the day, I want to stick to my values. And sometimes you got to sit down and write out your values. Be like, what's important to me? Friendship, compassion, honesty, curiosity. Think about these things that are important in your life, and then think about how you can show up in those ways throughout those traits. Again, curiosity. How do I bring that into work? How do I bring that into my friends' lives? That will probably make your relationship stronger. It will make you be able to show up better for other people, but also to be able to show up for yourself. And sometimes that's the hardest part.
And some of the things with values is we're thinking about with curiosity and everything, but value also is taking a shower.
Yeah.
Brushing your teeth. Putting away the dishes. Like, how do you value the life that you've built around you because of
keeping yourself afloat?
It's important. Everything has a certain meaning, and that's one thing that we have learned. It was time with values of that we had to reconnect ourselves, rebuild ourselves, and constantly that is something that I think people don't evaluate it long enough. They need to read every couple of months, sit down with yourself, have a conversation, just to figure out, what do I value? What do I not value? Has something changed in my life? Has something not changed in my life?
And it's okay if things change, too. Sometimes, you could be in a relationship with someone and really value companionship and reciprocity in that way. And then you might exit that relationship and be like, I really feel like being selfish right now. I really feel like not having to ask anyone else how they're feeling that day. And that's okay,
That's
too.
okay.
That's okay, too.
You have to look out for yourself, too. That's the thing. We have to live with our own selves. We live in our own identity, our own flesh and skin.
Yeah.
And not everyone's gonna like what we like. Not everyone is. And so, my wife and I love that my wife basically goes, I'm gonna go to a concert or something, and she goes, have fun. Go enjoy it. And she doesn't want me to stop and not go because she's not going. No, she wants me to live my life and still be able to be out there and do that kind of stuff.
And that's the best type of companionship, that sort of companionship that encourages you to take that step forward and indulge in what you love.
It does. And so you use the word authenticity. You use the word authenticity. So how do you balance between authentic with the performance aspect of your life? Because there's a lot of conflict there between those two sections.
There's so much conflict there. And that's something that I struggle with in my life, because I've always had people say to me my whole life, oh, you're such a theater kid. Oh, you have all these big ideas. You're so declarative. It's just in my nature. I grew up, I guess, back to the whole wiki notes. I grew up just loving, I just love stories. I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to be interacting with others. Some of my favorite moments were behind the curtain when I was just joking around with my friends in between rehearsals, or the moment before you go on stage, not necessarily the act of being on stage itself. But when it comes to being authentic, again, back to values, thinking about how do I feel right now and being true to that. I think that I've done a lot of self-discovery recently, and I would say that the past 6 months have been a really big change. There's been a lot of big changes in my life and a lot of growth. And I feel like even the people that have known and loved me for a while have noticed the change in me for the better.
Good.
And the
That's
best
the
way.
It always should be for the better.
It's always for the better. And I've found that maybe I've changed not by becoming colder, but boundaries. And I think boundaries is something that also kind of gives you that difference between the authenticity and the performance, is figuring out, okay, what is your boundary and how far are you willing to go? Are you being true to yourself, and are you having a good time? I think at the end of the day, there's some things in life you have to do, like go grocery shopping. I have to do that later. Am I excited for it? No. Am I going to put on a performance for it? Not necessarily. But I'm going to act like a normal person in the grocery store and do my things and make small talk with people that come and talk to me and all of that.
Yeah, if you run into something, you're not going to all of a sudden go scream out, I don't like that brand.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. You can't do that.
Yeah.
But maybe you want to in a way.
Exactly. You can say it
so
in
you're
your
kind
mail
of
on your
performing
head.
in a way, and you're masking in that way, because could you ever be your true unfiltered self? Not necessarily.
Because of societal norms.
Yes, because society constricts us. And I don't want to be like sitting here being like a hippie, like, oh, society's so constricting. But it is a time. And it's like, okay, so if society is constricting us and society is telling me that I should be feeling this way, how do I bring in an element of confidence into that? How do I keep myself grounded while also understanding, this is what I need to do from society right now? That's kind of how I feel with it. So when it comes to performing versus being authentic, when I think, again, just values, thinking about when it comes to my friends, what are values that are important to me in friendship? Honesty, communication, adventure. Those are my top 3. I want people that are going to be fun, that are going to want to hang out and try new things, and people that are going to be open and honest in communication. You don't have to hang out with me every day. You don't have to talk to me every day. But if you're a good friend, I want to feel like you are invested in my life, because I will 100% be invested in your life.
Friends are the family you choose.
Absolutely. And those are the people that sometimes you feel the less performative around. And that's the best kind. That's the best kind of performance. But at the same time, it is a performance, because when you go out with your friends, when the girls are out on the town Friday night, you do your makeup, do your hair, put on a nice outfit, go and have like a nice drink. That's you needing to show up in a certain way. That's not you sitting around in your sweatpants, like not talking to anyone, zoned out. So it's all about how do you present yourself and how do you pick what's important in your life. Now, it's important to stick to your values. If your values are telling you, I actually want to sit on the couch because I've had a really long week and I want to sit there in my sweatpants and eat ice cream and not talk to anyone, that's amazing. Go 100% into those values.
Commit it.
It's commitment. And then it's being able to surround yourself with people that allow you to be fluid in that. I think in adult friendship
is so key.
I think that like one thing, another life is performance, another topic that made me get to this overarching topic is that it's really hard to make friends in adulthood sometimes.
Yes, it is. As soon as because we're not in the social aspects of in school, when we're surrounded by
and you have everything in common with people.
Yeah, you're running now. You're meeting people at work, or you're meeting people at the restaurant, or meeting someone out. Like we don't intentionally see thousands of people in a day that we can interact with.
Exactly. And it's like, how do I show up for that person? How do I be my most authentic self? But how do I make them like me at the same time? You know, like
in a
you don't want to
short blip
be
of time.
unlikable. And I know, again, what people are going to say. They're going to say, why do you care so much about what other people think? It's not that. It's like, how am I showing up in my life so I could have the best type of relationships, I could have the most authentic relationships, and it's a lot of trial and error. Sometimes it's putting yourself out there, putting on a performance of, you know, maybe you're not feeling your best, but you know, you put on your favorite outfit and you put on a comfy pair of shoes and you walk on the Beltline and then you meet a new friend that day. That's performative because you had to put in that maintenance phase of getting ready, of taking care of yourself, of making sure, you know, like all your hygiene's covered. That's performative action number one.
Number one, right? First thing in the morning.
Starting in the beginning when you take a shower in the morning, feeding yourself. All of these are things that we need to do to reach a goal. Acting is the same thing. The goal of a performance, life is a performance. Showtime is right now. You don't get another chance, and the show must go on. We're live. The show must go on. So it's being authentic, and it's being like, what's important to me in that moment? But at the same time, how do I be flexible in my life? I think flexibility is really important with that. And I think I want to introduce the idea of improv now in the conversation. Because
I was going to go emotional, but I was thinking because we were like, but that's improv works.
Well, I think it goes back into the idea of roles and characters because I'm actually starting an improv class in a couple weeks.
Oh, where are you taking it at?
Dad's Garage.
Okay.
I'm very excited.
Shout out.
Yes, shout out Dad's Garage. It's a fabulous 501(c)(3) theater. I love going there. They do great improv and comedy and troupe stuff and all of that. And so they're doing improv classes. And I've done improv before. It's been a couple years. And
rework the muscle.
Yes. So that's the thing. I thought to myself, how do I keep this notion of different characters? How do I strengthen, almost mentally sharpen myself, right? Because I think we're so overstimulated by constant communication with everyone, where you could talk to your best friend all day, every day, and then get there and have nothing to say to each other because you text all day, every day. So it's like, how do you pull these new stories and experiences and keep things fresh and unique? To me, that's something that's important in life, is not staying stagnant. I want to continue my relationships forward. I want to continue my career forward. I want to propel my ideas forward. And one way that I'm hoping to do that is through improv. And it is just a fun, silly growth thing for me to work on and to have a supportive group of people on a Tuesday night to play theater games with. But at the same time, it's helping me get better at presentational speaking. Being able to speak in front of your...
is so key.
Being able to speak, and that's how you present yourself to people, especially in the working world. I hate to tie it back to work, but, you know, we got to make a living somehow.
There's all different aspects of our life.
Exactly.
We have our home life, we have our work life, we have our outside of the home life, and then you have your family life, and you have your friend life. I mean, you could say there's thousands of different lives that we live.
Exactly. And that's why improv is one of I wrote a little note on it. Embracing spontaneity. I think that's something that's what I wanted to say. The idea of balancing being authentic with performance is the act of spontaneity and being able to roll with it. And that's what improv helps with. Most people know that improv is yes and based, right? Where you have a scene and you're with your scene partner, yes and. You have to keep the story going. You can't just be like, actually, no, I don't like that. We're moving on to something else. You could, but you're not going to be a good improv partner.
Exactly. You're going to wind up creating more chaos.
Right. And I think that humans want connection. We want to be in this world. We want to be liked. We want to be loved. We want to be loved and desired by other people. So it's only natural that you want to do things that help bring and gravitate other people into your circle. And that's what being authentic is when you find someone that shares that same level of authenticity on something that you love, you can sit with them for hours and feel like no time has passed.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best conversations right there. Whenever you can sit and do that, and you're not worried about, that's why I have to set alarms when I go places with people. And though it can be very detrimental at times setting alarms, but it is. If I know I have to be somewhere at 5 o'clock and I get there at noon, I may be 5 o'clock still talking.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Because you're curious, and that's why you have this podcast. And again, that's something that is just so important. And I think part of how I'm going to continue to assume different roles and characters in my life is by practicing literally being different characters within improv. I had an improv teacher once that had us, before we even got on stage, come up with an entire character and work with that character the entire semester. He wanted it to be based on not necessarily us, not like an autobiographical character, but something that we could relate to, tie it back to some sort of story or emotion or starting point that we felt grounded within. And then we would have to go through improv scenes as that character, living in their mind. And I remember creating this character. I don't remember the specifics of it because it was a while ago, but I remember that even through sadness, she was able to still laugh and joke. And for me, that was important. That was a value that I wanted. I wanted to keep my humor even when I'm not feeling my best mentally sharp or physically. I want to be able to use humor as a skill. So that's something that I worked on, was being funny within my character. And then that kind of translated into my life outside. I found myself coming up with more quips and not necessarily trying, but just being quicker on my feet and knowing that if I say something and it doesn't land, on to the next.
Yep.
Kind of how it is with people, kind of how it is with dating, kind of how it is with the job, where if one thing doesn't work, on to the next. And improv helps you build that muscle of failure and then being able to then move past it stronger than ever while sticking to your values at the same time. And that's why I'm taking these improv classes, is I think it's going to help me in my work world, in my professional world, in my personal world, even just in my own mind when I'm just spending time by myself.
Now I'm envious because I've been wanting to take an improv class, but I don't live close enough to Atlanta.
Oh, you don't live.
So I gotta,
oh my God.
I gotta find a place that does something like that around.
You have to.
Like I never was a big theater person. I was always a band kid, but always being surrounded by all the different, like the drama kids and being involved with all the different programs. And I like to be behind the scenes kind of deal, but I'm learning as I'm getting older, I need to be more forward. I need to be more in front of people.
Yeah.
I need to be more stuff like
and it's that muscle, because the older we get, the more tired we get and the more exhausted. Like I'm only 25, but I feel that, where it's like, oh, sometimes going and hanging out the whole day with your friends is exhausting. And these are people that you love and that you want to be around. And these are things that you want to do, but it still is draining. So it's, how do you find that replenishing time? And that's what I wanted to talk about.
Just wait 11 years. It gets worse. I'm 30. I'm 36.
Exactly.
I look at times of being like, I don't want to go out today. I don't want to people today.
Exactly.
I used to be
but sometimes you have
introverted. Yeah, no matter, that's emotional labor. There's so much emotional labor that goes into everything that we do.
Emotional labor.
Like, you have to put in the work.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. It's even though, yes, you can say your job is labor, but every day just getting out of bed is a work of labor. And you have to work at being a better person. You have to work at being, everything has a labor that goes to it. And as you said, with your values, you take your values, you take all these other information that you've gathered around already, and you have to build this character. What character you're accessing at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why it's funny, I've talked about this concept of performing, and everyone's like, I don't want to perform. I don't want to have to do that. But we do it innately.
We do it naturally.
And the more that we recognize that life is a set of different performances, I think the easier it is going to be to channel that energy and to try and figure out, okay, so then what's going to help me? What's going to make that performance a bit easier? If I have a hard time getting up in the morning, maybe I need to go to sleep a little bit earlier and change that routine, or wake up a little bit earlier, give myself that time to wake up. If I know that I'm not going to work out in the afternoon and I'm a morning workout person, then you need to build in that schedule and put on that performance, put on those clothes, put on your shoes, lace them up, put on a brave face, get outside. And it's all about just thrusting yourself into these new situations and then reacting to that stimuli. So again, that's why I just think improv is great, because improv will throw you into the most random, unforeseen circumstances without consequences.
Control. Exactly. Control.
And it's a safe space, because in the real world, if you mess up, like, there's consequences there, right? Like, if you hurt yourself or, by accident or whatever, if you say something and you get fired at your job, like, there are real life consequences. But that's where you have to rehearse. Just like you have to practice anything. And that's how I see this as a rehearsal phase. Like, those 2 hours that I will spend in the theater on those Tuesday nights are going to be me rehearsing, how do I carry myself more confidently in the real world?
Working that muscle. It's like going to the gym. Like, I am a terrible swimmer, I will admit, and I'm working on trying to swim better right now. And I am, every single day, I'm going in.
Hard.
It is really hard. I can swim on my back really well, but I can't swim on my stomach really well. And so the past couple of weeks, I joined a gym, and they have a pool there, and I'm slowly flipping over onto the other side and working that muscle and working that muscle. And But if I didn't put in that time, I didn't put in the emotional effort, I didn't put in the time to do it, it wouldn't happen.
Exactly.
And you're doing that with going to this class. Is you're sitting down, you're putting in the effort. We have to make time to improve ourselves.
Yes.
If we don't take the time,
it doesn't just happen out of nowhere.
Nope.
Unfortunately, as great as that would be, snap your fingers. Oh, amazing! Now I'm this 100% more invested person in my life than I was before. No, there's blood, sweat, and tears that go into that. And there's times where you don't feel well, and there's times where you don't feel like yourself, and you feel like you lose yourself, and you don't know what's important to you anymore. And those moments, those rock bottoms kind of are important to hit because you know what you don't want. Life is all about weeding out what you want and what you don't want, your list of non-negotiables. I had a friend tell me this in the world of dating where she's like, you have a list of non-negotiables of what you want in a person, what you don't want in a person. But you have that in a job. You have that in clothing. You have that in food. You have that in relationships. You have that in travel experiences. Everything you do is kind of a test and trial of what is working for you and what isn't working for you. What's something that you want to work on and what's something that maybe you know is just not for you. It's all that maintenance and that rehearsal. It's all practice until it's showtime and you're there and it all counts. And now every moment does count. But again, it's being able to incorporate these kind of coping skills in a way into low consequence situations. So then when it is performance time and your adrenaline kicks in, you know exactly your values, you know exactly what you're trying to accomplish, and you're all set and ready.
That's true because we surround ourselves with our performances by our actions before. Like the action, every action has a positive or negative reaction. I think that I can't remember who said that. I think that was Einstein or somebody. I'm probably butchering that one.
Every action has its equal opposite reaction.
Yeah.
Thanks to Hamilton, our cabinet's fractured into factions.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's from Hamilton.
It's from Hamilton.
Yeah, so
okay.
It's from that period of time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a theater reference thrown in there.
There we go. You throw that there. Is looking at it is how we react around people and how we choose to act within those performances will affect the next act. Because if all I'm doing is I'm going and say I'm drinking all night and I'm binge drinking and I'm going out, my performance is going to be completely hindered from what it traditionally would be. It's been altered.
Right.
And what consequences may come from that, good or bad, who knows? But I have to live with that the next day. And so the consequences that come from it. And so whenever you're doing your acting class or going to work or sitting at home watching TV, all these different things, they all interact in different ways by our choices. And that's something that I was curious about is whenever we meet these challenges that come from whenever we're making these choices or that we're making these performances, how do you cope with the challenges and difficulties that come with performance? Because not everything is happy-go-lucky.
No, definitely not.
Not everybody has it. Sometimes they have to go and quit their job or they have to go and break the bad news that someone's in their family has died or something like that. Like not everything's happy-go-lucky.
Right. Honestly, this is something that I learned recently, and this was something that has been life-changing for me. The active self-compassion. That is how I keep myself from feeling like I'm floating in a sea of nothingness when everything comes and crashes down. When the performance aspect isn't, when the rehearsal didn't go how I want it to, or how the real moment didn't go how I wanted it to. You fight those moments of failure by remembering that you're just human. And it's sometimes it's so hard because my whole life I've held myself up to
we have our own expectations,
perfectionistic pedestal. And who has set that expectation on myself but myself? And that's what I'm discovering now is that I'm the one that set that because I have this tenacity and this kind of outlandish desire to do everything in a creative spirit and a curiosity spirit or curious spirit. I forget that at the same time, I am just human and there's only 24 hours in a day and there's only so many things that I'm expected to do. You're not expected to overperform all the time. And part of those moments of rest and recovery are included in that maintenance phase.
Yes. And you can continue to try to push forward, but you're going to wind up hindering your performance if you're only sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night.
Right, exactly. Because then you have to compensate in other ways, and you don't want to. When it comes to performative actions like hanging out with friends or getting dressed up for a meal, you don't want to feel like you're the energy that you put in is then draining you completely. So it's about
Yes.
how do we replenish those energy levels and try and figure out like, okay, so this didn't go as well. Let's say I got rejected. I had an idea rejected at work, or that I didn't get the performance review that I wanted, or I got rejected by this person romantically, is thinking, how would this person feel if they were me? They would feel upset too. And I always like to think of treat yourself like you would treat other people. They
Yeah.
always tell you when you're growing up, treat others the way you would treat yourself. I really believe now in adulthood, it's treat yourself like you would treat other people, because I would never be berating towards someone that was going through a
Yes.
tough time the way that I'm berating towards me. I would never speak that way. The way that my inner critic speaks to myself at times, those words would never come out of my mouth. So it's just trying to be gentle and remind me that everyone's just here for the first time, that this act of performance, this act of life, all of this is we're just doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
It's the first
It's
run.
true.
It's a test run, and it's all rehearsal leading up to another point. And
Yeah.
again, I don't want it to be like, oh, we're just living in this world where we're waiting for something to happen to us. We're waiting for the big event to come. That's not it necessarily, but it's we're collecting experiences and we're being ingrained by those experiences and we're being informed by them along the way. So when it comes to the shortfalls in life, it's realizing how low the lows feel, but then how high the highs can feel. I think that that's something that I struggle with too, that emotional regulation of lows being low and highs being really high. Of course, happiness is fleeting at times, and
Yes,
happiness
but
is
it's
something that is felt really differently. And I think true happiness and joy is such a pure emotion that there's not room for it in every hour of the day.
it's true. I agree.
Because then we would feel nothing if we don't feel that huge mix of emotions. And that's what I love about theater, is that
All of
in
it
a
is
play,
different emotions. You go from one end to the other end.
yes, 2.5 hours, you could be screaming, crying, laughing, throwing up, everything under the sun, and then you could end and be like that. You could think about songs later on, songs that maybe, if it's a musical, that didn't impact you then, maybe you have a life experience that you feel drawn
And
to.
then you connect it.
And then you connect
That's when
to
music
it.
is all a connection.
And that's why I love theater so much too, is there's that inclusion of music and storytelling and rhythm, and just that transcends language, that you don't need to speak a common language to enjoy the power of music. So yeah, when it comes to the idea of disappointments, I practice self-compassion journaling, and that's something that I learned recently.
I
And
wish I was better at journaling,
oh,
but I'm terrible at it.
but here's the thing, journaling,
But I can get better.
you could
I can
get better because only you're reading it. No one else reads it.
This is true.
Right? No one else is going to, unless some crazy person is looking through your journal trying to find like your tax information or something. I don't know. But it's only you who's reading it. And I like to start off just with bullet points. Sometimes if I'm so lazy and I'm like, oh, I don't want to write a whole thing, and I have this whole idea, I want to write pages and pages, I know that's not in the cards for me, shorthand it. Right to the point where my handwriting is so crappy that I can't even read it myself. But at least I got the feeling out there, and it's on paper and it's sealed. And there's something magical about that, about putting your own physical writing in ink. Better than typing it, better than writing it on your phone. I'm a huge believer in always having a journal on you. I have my journal with me now. And just being able to sit and write out your thoughts, it makes it real. Because sometimes we get so hung up in our own minds that we don't know what feels real or not. You know, it's kind of hard to feel grounded in our everyday life. And the act of writing is so grounding. And just reflecting, saying like, this happened today. This made me smile. This food was good.
Yeah.
It could be it could sound like a 3-year-old isn't commentating on their life, but that still is something for you to look back on and be like, these are moments that made me happy, or these are moments that made me unhappy. Because it's always nice to have a reminder. You know,
It is.
our memories are
Forever
fragile.
fleeting.
Yeah, forever fleeting. And there's nothing like being able to seal something that really impacted you and made you feel something. It doesn't even have to be a positive emotion, but there's nothing better than putting that in writing and knowing that's authentically put there by you forever. So that's why I think journaling it's always worth the shot to just write emotions on how you're feeling. Feelings wheel, check in on the day.
Yeah,
Be like,
check on the day.
how
Yeah.
am I feeling today? You know, am I feeling angsty? Am I feeling excited? Am I feeling concerned? And then you could maybe dive into why that is. But pinpointing your feeling and just starting with that one word, just putting it out there, it makes it real and not in your head.
Love that.
you know?
And then you have to be vulnerable in the process of that.
And being vulnerable with yourself is sometimes the hardest part. I think about that, where I'm like, it's harder to admit things to yourself than it is to admit it to other people.
Yeah. There was one of my friends looks at me every so often and goes, be nice to my Cade. Like, because if no one else could be nice to them, but you're treating them like crap. Be nice to my Cade.
And it's like, we don't like people that treat our friends poorly, and we have to be friends with ourselves. We have to be best friends with ourselves.
We have to be, entirely best friends with ourselves, and so we have to be vulnerable with ourselves. And how do you add in vulnerability to your character?
It's hard because I do think that sometimes some people are just naturally a bit more vulnerable than others. I think some people are just maybe more emotionally in tune or have an easier time accessing their feelings. I think that's a hard thing. I've never had an issue with that, with accessing my feelings. It's more about how do I react to my feelings, and then that's where the trouble
that's always hard.
Comes in. It's not me. It's not the act of having feelings. I have many feelings. I have high feelings, low feelings, big feelings, small feelings, every feeling in between. I'm a person that feels deeply. There's something that I always think back to. There's a book called The Secret Life of Bees, and it's a wonderful book. And one of the sisters in the book, she has a dark story, but she explains that she feels the weight of the world through other people's emotions, and that it just sometimes becomes too much for her to feel the weight of the world, that if one bad thing happened, she feels it as if it happened to herself.
Oh, wow.
I kind of empathize with that sometimes, where it's like that source of empathy and vulnerability. Sometimes I need to set boundaries for myself and be like, okay, maybe I can't listen to the news today if I'm already in a little bit of a darker place. And
I'm trying to do a news fast right now just because of how rough things are.
I did a news fast kind of all throughout February just because I was like, I can't keep listening to what's going on. Like, I can't change anything in the world. This is not up to me. This is out of my control. So just being open and honest with that. And just sometimes just yapping with friends. That sounds crazy. And I know yapping kind of gets like just letting loose and just letting your mind go. I think people
it's all about guards. You got to let that guard up and guard down.
Exactly.
And when is the right time to do it?
Exactly. That's what I think. Sometimes just having a day where you just feel really open and silly with your friends and like run. Just go on a run, like do something very energy inducing, right? Get those endorphins flowing, and then just say whatever is on your mind.
Be a little
impulsive
at times on that.
Impulsivity. And of course, there's a level of impulsivity. Right. We don't want you to go and like drive 100 miles per hour and like crash your car, but we want you to be able to feel that rush of adrenaline in a way that is pushing yourself. You know, to say like, wow, I didn't realize I had the capacity to do that.
Yeah, I pushed myself just a little bit, one step further.
And
like people, when they work out, they say like, hey, when you're doing a 50 push-ups, do 51. Can you do one more?
Can you do one more? And so when it comes to vulnerability, for me, it's just knowing that no matter what I say won't scare my friends, because everyone has been through, even if people haven't experienced your particular event or feelings or whatever it is, that people have had their own point where they feel like they have felt the lowest in their life. And if you're feeling vulnerable and you feel like you need to connect with someone, it's not about trauma dumping, and it's not about sitting and talking about how shitty everything in life is, but talking about what your goals and what you want to see and maybe why it's bothering you right now in this moment. And sometimes you just need to talk it out.
Yeah.
And realize that you're friends and just trust other people.
That's the big thing. You have to trust.
It's trust, and trust that other people are going to take what you say, you know, that they're going to put your best interest in mind, and that they're going to look at you and they're going to be like, I love you and I appreciate you. And that was a crazy thing you just said, but we'll help you get there.
Yeah.
You know, surrounding yourself with people that know that at times you can be performative and times you can let your guard down. So it's all about that and that guardrail.
And that's what takes time in order to kindle those relationships, to be able to decide when is it, as you said, appropriate to allow to become that person you want to be or not be that person at that time. And relationships kindle over time. You're not going to all of a sudden be hanging out with a person for a week and then tell them your life story. Like, you know, on a first date, you're not going to all of a sudden just blurt out everything about you. You have to like reveal little by little.
Of course.
And that vulnerability is it comes in stages.
Yes.
Like it entirely
Dosing.
is. Yeah.
It's literally like microdosing vulnerability a little bit, and trying to figure out small ways that you could bring that in. Maybe if you're not feeling great one day, instead of your friend saying, Instead, when your friend says, how are you? And instead of saying, oh, I'm great, everything's great, maybe be like, you know what, like, I'm feeling this way today. And I don't want to talk about it necessarily, but I want to let you know how I'm feeling.
And that takes a lot of nerve to be able to say that, because we're so used to the conversation of, you walk up to someone and go, how you feeling? Great.
Great.
Or
how are you?
Fine.
Right.
Or okay.
Right.
Like, and we move on from it.
Right.
And that's,
no one really cares about how you're feeling, but your friends do.
They do.
If they're
They
good
want
friends,
to know.
they want to know.
They want to know.
And I have a hard time in my life sometimes believing that people want to listen to me, that they want that I am seen and I'm heard, even though I have no indication that I'm not, just my own mind.
We're on our own worst critic.
Right, exactly.
Like, all the time.
So just being vulnerable in that sense of sometimes even just letting people know when I'm not okay and not being okay in front of other people. That's something that I have a really hard time with. No one wants to cry in front of others or feel upset, but even with my friends, like, just going out, if they're like, come to dinner with us, and I'm like, no, I'm not really feeling it. Just maybe even stepping outside and showing up for 5 minutes, a little bit of time, just to show that it's like, okay, this is where I'm at. I'm meeting you where I'm at. I'm not putting on a face. I'm not trying to pretend like everything's okay, but I am trying to just make it through this moment. And sometimes that's performative within itself. Needing to just put on clothes, put on a little bit of makeup, get outside, feed yourself, all these things that you need to keep yourself running. It doesn't need to be this big, grand gesture, but more just like, this is me. I'm trying my best in the moment, and I need you to meet me where I'm at.
Yeah.
And that's why my next idea with this is that people in your life are kind of like your scene partners in a way.
Ooh,
if we're looking at it through that analysis.
I like that analysis.
Right. Because, we're sitting here, we're having a conversation. I'm reacting to what you're saying. You're reacting to what I'm saying. That's how normal conversation works. Right. So
A, B, A, B,
A, B,
A,
A, B, A, B. Exactly. So that's all about reacting. Life is reaction. I could just be like, oh, look at that bird over there. How crazy is that? And we could just start talking about birds. And that could be for the next hour of the conversation.
Not gonna lie, I thought there was a bird.
Right. No, exactly.
I was like, bird?
It could be that. But it's more about like, how are you being able to show up in a way that makes you feel good and that can help other people feel good too? Can you show that you're giving people a little bit of your energy outside of just yourself? It's important to work on yourself. And I'm in this era of working on myself and being selfish for the first time in my life. That's not something that I ever would want to be. But now I'm really striving to be a bit more selfish.
You have to be a little more selfish to take care of yourself, because there's only one of you.
Because there's only one of me. That's very true.
And we give ourselves away so much to percentages in a day to people. Like, whenever you go to work, you're having to give 60% of yourself at that time whenever you clock into work. And whenever you leave work, you leave that part behind. And then you're going home to an animal.
Mm-hmm.
You got to give the animal your attention. That's a percentage of yourself of the day. And maybe your battery gets drained really quickly to that point for it. And if you have to selfishly save in your reserve, some for yourself. And that's hard to be selfish, because we want to be there for other individuals. We want to be able to make people happy, but sometimes we forget to make ourselves happy.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing that comes up a lot. And something that I'm curious about, that in your opinion on, is we have performances that we see on TV, advertising, which affects what we wear, how we do,
totally,
our communication of whenever we dialogue with other individuals, we quote people. How do you think that affects your experiences because of seeing someone else's performance?
Let me think about that. How do my reaction then to other people's performances, and then how I implement that in my life?
Yes.
So I think that it all comes down to, what do I admire? Right. And that's kind of goes back to the
your
whole
mentors.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Thinking about, and again, mentor is a pretty professional term, but thinking about mentorship in terms of your interests as well. If I'm really into painting and I like Cézanne's style, I'm going to want to emulate his style. I'm going to learn as much about him. I'm going to take his work and think about, okay, well, if I had this experience, and let's say I'm working on a painting of an impressionist boat or something, gorgeous colors. Oh, but I maybe resonate more with blues than greens, and it reminds me of this one place that I went in Greece, and then I can paint something in his style.
To
influence. Right, exactly. That's kind of a very pointed answer that came to mind for me. I'm not sure why that came to mind, but it's more about taking my own experiences, and I like to go with my gut. So I always think, what's the first thing that I think or feel, especially now I'm thinking when it comes to art, right? What is something that what is my gut reaction to this painting? I always like to take a picture of it, and I like to think about, what would be my spin on it? a lot of the time it would be like where somewhere that I visited, or maybe a certain color that reminds me of my childhood yellow butter kitchen, or something that reminds me of my grandma. But I definitely like to look at other people's art and think, how would I apply that to my life? Because again, kind of back to the whole selfish notion of like, you need to be a little bit selfish in your life in order to get anywhere, make a name for yourself. Oh no, rogue papers.
Wind is everywhere. The
Wind.
wind is picking up and taking things places.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely like to look at other people's work and just think like, where is this coming from and what do I admire most about it and what does it make me think of off the bat? It's about connections, kind of. I like to think of it in terms of like neural pathways.
Okay.
My whole thing is I want to keep my mind sharp. As I get older, I want to keep my mind sharp and clean and that's what improv is going to do for me too. Just be able to build those new connections fast and be able to run with
Another
it.
tool in the toolbox.
Yes, exactly. So again, when I look at someone's work, like TV, for example, I'm a huge TV fan, and I look at different series or shows or characters that I enjoy. What are ways that I would bring that into my life? How would my own authentic voice, how would I speak in the way of that character? Sometimes a writing exercise that I do is I think about a character. Like I'm gonna plug my favorite TV show. It's called Search Party.
Okay.
Everyone should watch it. It's with Alia Shawkat. It's my best friend and I. It's our favorite thing ever. And it has everything you could possibly want in a show. So I think about that show and I think about all the characters and how funny it is. And it's about millennials in New York. So it's a little bit relatable to me. And I like to think about it. What would it be like if I wrote that show? What would it be like if I took the characters and all the different things that they're interacting with and all the costumes and all the music and the set? If I could make it in the life and the mind of Emily Bright, what would it look like? So I like to start with what do I like from their piece of art? What do I like about my life? How do I find that common tie? Or contrast. A big thing in creativity is opposites, right? Opposites attract, sure, but being able to think, we look at colors. If we look at color theory and how those different kind of colors interact, or we look at a plot twist in the best kind of thriller possible, right? Something you didn't see coming. How are you able to take other people's experiences and mesh it with your own to create an entirely new experience that no one ever saw coming?
That's true. The genres of music, that's how they all blossom and grow.
So that's something that I like to do when I interact with art is think about the message behind it, something that I like having to do, whether it's a style or a melody or whatever it is, and then think, how would I see that through my own authentic lens? What's the first thing that comes to mind? And I've been trying to, and I said this earlier, I've been trying to do a little bit better with sticking to my gut and listening to myself and just kind of knowing my intuition is stronger than I believe it to be. And that at my most authentic core, the first thing that comes to mind, that's authenticity. It's not necessarily the best idea in the world. Your first idea is never your best idea.
No, never the best because it can be always evolving.
But it helps inform your other ideas and where you're starting at. It gives you a baseline of who you are and what you're starting with. And I think it's important to know that baseline of yourself. So again, when I look at other people's work, I can see their baseline of like, okay, this is their distinct style. This is what they're trying to come across. How would I mesh it with mine? A lot of the times I'll feel inspired by something and then I write about it. And I'll just sit down. I like to write short stories mostly, kind of like from a third person perspective, some kind of like crafted monologue short story. And I'll take a painting. I went to the Met with my family last week when I was home, which was always great. It's one of the most fabulous museums.
One of your happy places.
One of my happy places is the Met for sure. And just looking at all the art there and then just going home and writing about it from the perspective of the colors and the shapes and the movement and just trying to, again, put myself in someone else's perspective, mesh with my own perspective to create a net new story, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
And it's something whenever you mentioned of like going to the Met and everything, is there significant moments or significant parts in your life that you think has really kind of shaped your performance of your person of who is Emily Bright?
I would chalk it up to my grandmother when I was young. She took me to a lot of Broadway shows because I grew up around New York. And my first show, I was 6. I went to go see Beauty and the Beast. And what I remember the most about it was the set and the costumes. That's what I was obsessed with. I loved that so much art and detail went into something that even at a young age, I was like, most people are probably thinking about the music and looking at all of that, but not like the props and all the little things that help tie a story together. And I became obsessed with every single part of live theater having to do with that.
Nice.
From the set to dialect coaches, to Foley, sound, all of that. So my grandma really inspired that in me very young. And then every chance I got, I would save up my money and go see a show. I would say that definitely when I started doing acting classes, I must have been around 7 or so. And I don't remember how I got started with it. I think at school there was a play. I just always felt comfortable on stage. I enjoy talking, truthfully. That's what it is.
That's, that's part of who you
that's
are.
my
It's part of your identity.
That's my self-expression. I enjoy writing. I enjoy sharing my ideas. I enjoy getting perspective from other people to counteract that and help improve my writing. I'm never shy away from any kind of constructive criticism. So I always liked the idea of being perceived and having notes on it, if that makes sense. When I was young, doing a scene and then having my teacher give me notes and adjustment. I like the idea of collaboration too. I was in every show when I was younger, in elementary school, middle school. Then I went back in high school and was in some of the dramas there. And there just was something about working so hard for a singular event, but having all these experiences inform it in the background that no one else will know but you guys. It's like all one big inside joke. That it's you and your cast members and the director and the crew and everyone know each late night you've been there, every single like crazy story that's been told, every time you went to the diner after, every stupid line mess up that someone's done. But all the rest of the world sees is this picture perfect, polished.
For however long the performance was.
Exactly. But the performance was happening way before.
Oh, yeah.
For me. That was the best part. Part of that chapter of my life when I was in a show, that act of performing every day and practicing the same lines, but doing them in different ways. There was something about that just rewired my brain, and I loved it. I loved being able to take a sentence and communicate it in a bunch of different ways. And then, of course, you're trying that out, and then you pick which avenue works, and you figure out your character, and you work on your lines, and you end up saying the same thing over and over and over, and it becomes very performative and very repetitive. But there's just something exciting about all the experiences that happen in the lead up, that those were the moments that I loved the most. Of course, I loved being on stage and the actual act of speaking, singing, dancing. But it was more about what are the moments that I'm collecting backstage, that this is such a niche experience that we will share and remember forever. And I might not be in touch with those people that I spent time with backstage, and some of them I might be in touch with now.
But they're still here with you
But they're
mentally.
still here.
They're still
Exactly.
there.
And I know that they're
gone.
thinking about that one time from A Few Good Men behind the scenes. And it's just, that will always make me smile. It's just things that keep you going during the day, things that make you smile, the little pleasures. That's what it was for me. And I just always loved song, too. Music was huge. I listened to a lot of music growing up. My music taste was heavily influenced by my parents because that's who I was listening. Right?
Exactly. That's what's around you.
And I've always had a pretty eclectic, widespread taste of music. But I will say that one of the first times that I really came to appreciate a band to the fullest for what it was, for their performance aspect, for their music, for their look, was the Rolling Stones.
Oh my gosh, yes. Entirely lifespan of how they've evolved, changed, grown.
And their outlook on performance, but you know who Mick Jagger is at his core.
Exactly.
He is the most authentic person, and the fact that he goes, even still, I saw him last year at Mercedes-Benz Center when they came to town. It was unbelievable. And just being able to see his true self. I don't know him. I will never know him, but you can just kind of tell
he's giving it his all.
Yes, exactly. And I remember in high school, I went to it was an exhibit for the Rolling Stones talking about how they got together and their music and their sound and the instruments and everything, the costumes. And I just fell in love with the production value. And that's one moment in my life that I really remember seeing an exhibit, an art installation, and that impacted a lifelong passion of mine. I've been a diehard Rolling Stones fan ever since. I feel like that day, seeing how all the work that went into a performance, all the behind the scenes, that changed it for me.
Yeah.
Instead of just seeing the live performance. Yeah. That it was such a deep dive, and it was the costumes really that got me. I love
fashion.
That's the
theater aspect.
It's the theater aspect. Yeah. I love being able to, your style says a lot about you. I wouldn't say that I'm an overly stylish person in my daily life necessarily. I enjoy looking nice. I enjoy wearing nice clothes. But that also is part of a performance, right? Because there's certain things that you wear to work, and there's certain things that you wear to the gym, and there's
That's
certain
true.
things you wear to the dentist or the grocery store, and there's certain things you wear to go to nice restaurants and to go out. So it's all going back to that idea of there's different ways in your life to find those moments of happiness and help inform those experiences. So for me, I listened to what made me feel happy. I felt happy being transported in the dark with huge, larger than life scaled stories, song,
Yes.
dance, the big bright lights. I love Times Square. It's terrible, but I love it. There's nothing more exciting than walking around Times Square as the lights are going down and everything's brightening up. So that just, for me, that's where I felt happiness, around, surrounded by a lot of people telling stories that I could feel impacted by, even if I didn't experience it myself. There was
Yeah.
some way of tying music and art and all of that together, and that just always made me very emotional. I wanted to be involved in that. I wanted to be a part of those stories.
That's why the art's so powerful. Like, that's the one thing that I always, even there is so much involved in the arts than just what we visually see in the performance. As you mentioned, there's thousands of people that go into a 5-person performance.
Mhm.
And just because of, and you're like, but you mean a truck driver is an artist? Yes.
Yes.
A truck driver is entirely an artist
Mhm.
because of they have to safely get from one place to the next place, and they're
that's
moving.
performative within itself. They are
Exactly.
performing. They're performing because they have to be responsible and safe when they're driving. They
Yep.
need to get goods or people from A to B.
Yep.
They can't just be reckless. Like,
Yep.
there's certain standards that you have to uphold yourself to. And that's what I'm saying, is trying to navigate those different standards in your life. That will be key to helping you unlock your most authentic self.
Yes.
And listening to those moments of, where do I feel happy? And of course, you feel happy when you're hanging out with your friends. You can't hang out with your friends all the time,
No, you can't.
24/7. That would be
Exactly.
great. But it's like, can you
Where can I take those skills?
Yes.
Where can I can find meaning, can find purpose? And that's something that we all look for whenever we go into a career, is something that is fulfilling, because we want to be. That's the one thing that I always tell people when in the classroom, whenever I'm teaching, is you don't have to go to college.
Mhm.
You can
Absolutely.
be able to get your education anywhere and everywhere. And you're getting education around you by listening to a podcast, watching something on YouTube, where you're choosing to spend your time. And that's whenever you get older and you then choose to spend your time saying, on this certain career, we're going to use truck driving again.
Mhm.
In that, be happy with where you are.
Mhm.
Be where you are. Be happy with where you are. And if you're not, maybe it needs to be changed.
Mhm.
You know?
And change, and never
And-
shy away from change.
Never try. Exactly.
Change
Never
is
shy
really
away.
scary and really hard. And obviously, that's something that us as humans, we're adept to a routine, and we want to build routine in our life. We want to feel safe and sheltered within that. But even just the change of, like, going on a walk every day,
Yeah.
a small little change, getting a little bit more sunshine, eating a bit more protein. I'm just trying to think of simple changes that I'm doing in my life, but that can help
For me,
bring.
I sat and ate my lunch for a lot longer than I normally would. Like, I sat
Oh.
there and I actually had spaghetti, and I twisted it and twisted it and twisted
You
it and twisted
twirled it
it
and
and
all
whirled
that,
it
yeah.
before I ate it, rather than just going stab, eat,
And
stab,
mindlessly
eat.
eating.
Exactly.
It's about being mindful in those moments and bringing mindfulness. And again, mindfulness is something that up until recently I kind of like poo-pooed. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
we were thinking,
mindfulness.
hippie kind of thing again.
Exactly,
that
which
whole
I
idea.
love hippie
I
dippy
love the
stuff.
hippie stuff. I'm
But
all about it.
right, I was born in the wrong
Same here.
decade for sure.
Yep.
But yeah, it's one of those things where you just need to let your mind do one thing at a time. We're so used to having our phones by us, and like I have like a million
Overstimulation.
beverages with me. I have my water, I have my coffee, I have like we're used to having a million things
Yeah.
going at
Stimulants.
once,
Yeah.
and
Stimulants.
just thinking and stripping back down to, like, okay, I'm eating. I'm doing a basic function that I need to do in my life. This is going to keep me alive, but it's pleasurable as well. So it's like, how do we find pleasure in those small moments? And then that helps us unlock authenticity.
Yes.
Because if we don't try new things, we're going to get stagnant in our lives, and then you get restless. And to me, that's something that I really struggle with. Restlessness is one of the hardest emotions to combat because you have all this energy and you don't know what to do with it. That's why hobbies are important.
Yeah, and one thing they're a lifesaver, and I'm trying to figure out mine are, because I've lost a lot of my good hobbies.
Mhm.
But something I want to throw out there that I was throughout this conversation right now that we were just having here is, not every job is going to be perfect.
Right.
Never every place in your spot in your life is going to be perfect. It's what you take from that to the next scene is what matters.
Yes.
And that's something that
Absolutely.
when we're looking for a job, sometimes you just got to accept working at McDonald's for a little while. And there's nothing wrong with working at McDonald's. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a great job.
Right.
But that may be where you need to be at that moment in time.
And
then that may
what
lead
purpose is
to-
that serving you? How are you bringing purpose into that? It's all about
Exactly. And what's your intention to go further with it? What's the goal afterwards? Where's the next step?
Yeah.
You know?
It's a balance, too, between being too forward-thinking and trying to live in the present. I find that I'm a very forward-thinking person and I'm a planner. That's something that I'm trying to be a little bit better about. Boundaries and letting myself just kind
I
of
struggle with that a lot.
Yeah, just even people in my life have commented recently. My mom said, she was like, wow, you really seem a lot more relaxed when you don't have like a set plan. You didn't go into overdrive to try and pinpoint everything at the right moment and make it perfect.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I just didn't feel like it. And that was me being my authentic self in the moment. She was like, I've never seen this side of you, and it's a great side of you. So it's about showing people you love. That's the best, honestly, is when you put in work to yourself and other people you love can notice it and also feel impacted by your time together. To be like, wow, that really made our time special. I feel so happy that you've gotten to this point in your life. That's being vulnerable.
Yep.
And it can be good vulnerable or bad vulnerable.
And it's uncertain at times because, I had a great analogy that an individual gave me about uncertainty of you could be the best driver in the world. You could have the most tip-top cleanest of cars and you've taken it. You've got the oil changed on it constantly. You've taken care of the car, but you could be T-boned tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing you can control about the
Nothing you
uncertainty
can
of that
control.
all. But the thing is, you make those choices leading up to that moment. Like that's the thing. Like you cannot plan for the T-boning, but you shouldn't plan to be
But
T-boned.
you shouldn't, right.
You should be enjoying where you are.
Mhm.
Life happens. That's
And
the thing at
that's
the end of the
why
day.
it's setting small goals every day.
Yes.
Back to the
Yep.
SMART goal thing. Setting small goals.
Setting smart goals.
And trying to think about, okay, what's one thing in my life that's realistic that I can do that will make an impact? Whether it could be something like just, again, eat more protein. That's what I've been trying to do in my life and just try and listen to my body more and give it what it needs.
Yeah.
But being able to set boundaries in that way and goals has helped me figure out what is the most authentic version of myself, because maybe I'm slacking in some areas and maybe that's me and my authentic version, but that's something that I need to work on. It doesn't, just because your authentic version is one way doesn't mean it's set in stone that way.
Yeah, it could change tomorrow.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing. You don't have to be set in stone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's, and even
Fluidity.
it's, just being able to be fluid in your approach and also just know that life is silly sometimes, and life was it really
Laugh.
is like
You really-
laugh,
yeah,
like
it should.
truly to laugh.
Yeah.
And I'm again a planner, and sometimes you plan things and it doesn't always go in the way that you want it to, but it's learning from that and learning from that disappointment too. I think a really big part about performance and authenticity is that rejection piece. And
That is huge.
that's big, and that's ego crushing, right? No one wants to be
How
told.
can you respond? How do you respond?
Self-compassion.
Yep.
And again, that's something that I've learned recently, and that's really what spurred this whole conversation idea, is that self-compassion is the key to picking yourself back up, because no one's going to be there for you but you.
Yep.
No one's going to be, of course you have people, hopefully.
You have people that surround you. And you
Yes.
have we have
But
little
you have
Sherpas
to
and
put
everything
in-
that you have to
yeah.
put in the time. You
You
have to
put in
surround
the
yourself
work.
with the right people, but you have to put in, you can lead a horse to water. You can't force it to drink. You can
Yeah.
drown it, but you can't sit there and force it to, get the breath of air, get back going again.
And it's
Like-
also just remembering that other people are not thinking about you in the way that you're thinking about you.
Yes. That's a
And
hard
they're
one
not
to
thinking
think.
about your performance in the way that you're thinking about your performance. And that's why it's so individualistic. And we live in an individualistic society. And I think that kind of goes in with your question of like, how do societal norms infiltrate within this authenticity?
True.
It makes it really hard for us to feel like we can let our guard down. But that's why it's important to find those people where you can let your guard down.
Exactly.
The best type of friends where you could just sit and do nothing and just kind of
And those are the best times.
Right, and those are the
Yeah,
best
those are
times,
the
just
best
kind
times.
of recoup, or where if you go home to your family and you feel like it's a safe space and you can just exist and be
Recharge.
and not,
Yeah.
recharging and figuring out what recharges you. Some people get their energy from others. Some people get their energy from holding away for 3 days by themselves at one period of time.
With a bag of Doritos.
Right, exactly. So you just have to figure out what is the best part about that and try different things. I'm a big proponent of movement, and that's why I also think life is a performance, because movement is so performative. We have to literally tell our brains, tell our bodies to act out these things that feel so natural to us, but it is a performance. We're chemically or whatever, scientifically telling ourselves and building those pathways. So again, it all goes back down to effort and needing to put effort into our everyday lives. And it's all about how you direct that effort and how much effort you put into a single task. And you have to kind of delegate that effort
and
and
never
be
give
careful.
up. Don't give up.
Don't give up. Because some
and
days
you
might
may
be
fall
terrible.
50 times, but that 51st time it may click.
And on also realizing that authenticity means that you're not going to be at your best every single day. That it's okay to have days where you just don't feel your best, and there might not be a rhyme or reason, and to not harp over it, not ruminate over it, but just be like, this is how I'm feeling in the moment, and just accept it. It's that radical acceptance
It's huge.
of every day.
Huge.
And every day you're being dealt a new card, and how am I going to react to it?
How am I going to play those cards that day?
How am I going to react with this to what's been dealt to me? Am I going to sit around and feel sorry for myself? Am I going to go out and get some exercise and move my mind and body? Am I going to fuel my body with food that it needs? Am I going to call a trusted friend? Am I going to go on a hike? There's so many things that you can do, and that's all performative because you made that choice. Right? It's all about the choices you make, and it's all about, okay, you set your mind to something and you're acting it out and you're doing it. So it's not performative in a fake sense, but it's just that life is effort and life is creativity, and it's all about finding the missing puzzle piece for that exact moment and really just taking it day by day. That's the best we could do.
That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
That is just, there's a lot we've discussed here, and as we start to kind of wind down, is there anything that we've missed that we just haven't discussed that we want to hit on?
I guess one thing that I will say that you can do to keep yourself kind of sharp is journaling. I really want to hit home that point of just journaling every day and being in touch with yourself, because you can't show up for other people in your most authentic way if you don't know how to do that for yourself. If you don't know how to have those check-ins with yourself, how to talk to yourself. I do this all the time, talk to myself. I stand in front of the mirror. If I have an important presentation or an important conversation to have with someone, I will sit and I will rehearse it. And I will look at myself and I will make sure I have my body language right, my smile, or whatever my facial expression needs to be. And never be afraid to talk things out with yourself and really work through problems. Sometimes being a person feels like having multiple people inside of you, because you can feel so many feelings at once, and you're never just alone. Even with your own thoughts, your mind kind of sometimes can feel separate from your body, from your emotions. So lean into those different parts of yourself. Lean into those darker sides and see what perspective that shows. There's a lot of beauty that comes from there, and that's why so many, artists are tortured in some way or not, right? It's being able to take those dark experiences and turn it into beauty, right? And beauty means different things to different people too. So figuring out what's beautiful to you today might be beautiful to you tomorrow, may not be. So it's all about just
exploration.
Yes, exactly. And again, journaling to me, that has been the biggest thing. That has been life-saving. And to understand me and how my mind works and just throw around different words and crossing things out. I'm a lefty, so I always get pen on my hand.
I'm a righty and I get pen on my hand.
And so when I write, like the entirety of my left hand, it's the battle scars.
Yeah.
So for me, that is a way to know that I've put my due diligence in and I've really sat and I've worked on myself when I have battle scars to show. That's how I know that I felt
I like
fulfilled.
that terminology as a battle scar.
No, they're my ink battle scars. Battle scars inked into my skin. Yeah.
Is there any other last minute words of wisdom that you'd like to leave people with? Because I know we really heavily promoted journaling, but is there like a quote? Is there like a something to go look up or something that you want to be able to leave the guests with before we wrap up today?
You know what? This has been my quote for the past couple months, and it's going to be my quote still. Inspire or don't. I have a notebook that says that, and I think, and that's how I lead my everyday. You can choose to inspire or don't. It's your choice. It's all about, do you put in the work to show up as your best self? Do you put in the work to work on this project? Do you put in the work to be there for your friend who really needs you? Or do you put in the work to just have a nice hangout with your friends and, enjoy a nice Sunday afternoon? It's all about work that you put in to get yourself to that point. And so for me, I think you have the choice to inspire, and inspiring can be even the smallest little thing. The smallest things can be inspirational, right? That's why reconnecting with nature is so important, being able to go and just sit and go back to the roots of like what humanity has grounded us in,
Be grounded.
Yeah, like we forget a lot of the time that we are so tied to nature, and that's something that I try to do in my life. I try and just go back out there and sit and just feel inspired by the world around me, because that's what we're given. We're given the world around us to look to and to work with. And that's, we're here to live in tandem with it. So I do think that there is looking for inspiration in everyday life is important too. And you have the chance to inspire people or don't. You have the chance to show up, and you don't have to do it every day. And it doesn't have to be the biggest source of inspiration or the most declarative statement that you've ever said. But did you touch someone with your words or your actions or your presence that day? Yes or no? It's okay if you didn't too, but did you try? It's more about the effort, I think, of trying to inspire. Or are you inspiring yourself to keep going? Not necessarily for other people, but are you doing it for yourself to show up as the best version of yourself every day? Are you doing that or are you not? It's your choice.
Powerful words. That's a great way. I don't even know what more to say. And if someone wanted to reach out to you, would there be a way that someone could be able to reach out to ask a little bit more for you, Emily?
Of course. You're welcome to find me. My email, you can send me an email if you're interested. My email is ebright1028@gmail.com. And my Instagram is m_bright_. Bright, BRIGHT, like the sun.
So then, that's awesome, because of be able to have someone that can be influential, or being someone just to ask a question, but like, wait a second, I'm curious to see what her opinion is on this
Exactly.
now. Like, it's in so
never be afraid to ask. Yeah. Because the worst thing is that the other person doesn't respond. I will respond to your question, I promise you. If
it just might take a little while.
It might take, yeah, exactly. It might not be that second, but it's, did you put the effort in and did you try your best? Because you don't want to live your life with what ifs.
Yep.
Right? You don't want to live with regret. You don't want to be like, what if I did this? What if I put myself out there? What if I was more vulnerable? What if I listened to what I truly love? Just try it and experience it. And if you fail, then take some time to collect yourself and then readjust. We have not all the time in the world, but life is long to figure out this stuff.
You have all of your life to figure out.
Yes, exactly. It's
however
not
that long it may be.
It's not something that is solved within the hour or the day or the decade.
True.
It's a lifelong journey.
Yeah. And with that, if you'd like to reach out to me, my email is cade, which is spelled CADE, @learningfromfriends.com. I have a Facebook page, Learning from Friends Podcast. I have a Twitter page, or X. Sorry, I keep wanting to say Twitter.
No, it's Twitter.
Like, it
is Twitter.
And that's Learning from Friends Podcast. I have a LinkedIn page if you want to reach out that way. I also have a Patreon page. If you'd like to make a donation or anything of that sort, feel free. I have t-shirts if you want to buy a t-shirt. Feel free just to kind of reach out in any way, form, or fashion, whether it is with a review as well on any platform that you listen to this on, is just leave a response. Recommend this to a friend. The best way of advertising is word of mouth.
Yes,
because it is the one, everyone respects everyone's opinion in different ways, whether it's good or bad. We all have an opinion. So with that, my name is Cade Curtis, your tour guide in this lovely adventure that I like to call Learning from Friends. And most of all, don't forget to let your curiosity fly high.